Hello, everyone. My name is Corey Sanchez-Smith. I'm the owner of Heart Shift Consulting, where we cultivate choice-filled lives through heart work. I'm so happy you're here. And if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way, everything we produce will go right into your feed, and you'll get it as soon as we release it. Today, I'm so happy to be able to introduce you to my friend Caroline Chase. Caroline, whether she knew it or not, served really as a mentor to me as I grew in my own SEL understanding and practice. She is an integral part of the initial team at Austin ISD, Independent School District, really pioneers in district-wide SEL implementation. She has so much to give, and I am overjoyed that she allowed us to pick her brain just a little bit as we look at what it really means to support teachers through SEL implementation. So, without further ado, my friend, Caroline. Hi, Caroline.
Hi, Corey.
I'm so happy to see you.
I'm so happy to see you too.
It's been too long. And if I didn't say it before, I want to make sure that I thank you now, because when we were at the beginning of our SEL journey, and I had zero clue what it meant. I knew the acronyms. I knew it was kind of a big deal. I knew I should be doing something with it, but really had no idea what it meant to implement social emotional learning. And you graciously toured us around your school district, Austin Independent School District, and being able to walk in and out of schools that had been committed to SEL for years at that point. I think you guys were like the 4-year mark. A district-wide initiative that was making a national, splash. It meant everything to me. It was pivotal in my development. It gave me an end point. I was able to say, that's where we're going. Mm-hmm. So thank you for your hospitality. Thank you for your team's hard work and for sharing your baby with an outsider. So thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. It was our goal from the beginning to share. That really was something that, we knew that this was something that was going to go across our country, and had no idea it would end up across the world. Yeah. But it was really important to us to share not only what we had learned and were doing well, but also what we had learned through our failures along the way. And
so SEL of you. So let me just start with this simple question. You guys in Austin were the premier school district. Like, you were committed to social emotional learning from your superintendent down before the rest of us knew what was going on. And because of that, we're really by yourselves in the beginning, making something brand new. So tell us about the beginning and developing something that you really didn't have any support around in terms of a model, how you got there, just what that was like.
Well, it was really scary. It was a huge task and a huge ask, just this whole idea of, can you implement SEL across an entire urban school district? And we were pretty big at that point. We had about 84,000 students at that time and 130 campuses, and started with a team of 4. So we decided that the best way to do that was to take it one step at a time, 1 year at a time, and set a 5-year goal to get SEL across all of our campuses. So we started with 2 vertical teams, which is a high school and the middle school or middle schools and elementary schools that feed into them. Those 2 vertical teams came on willingly and were committed to starting the work and trying to do the work. And I think they probably didn't know what they were getting into either at the time, really. Yeah. But we had a lot of mental health issues going on at that time. We had suffered some suicides, both on our school campuses and by students who had gone off to college, and were really struggling with the stressors of that. So we knew that we needed our campuses to have help with how do we approach our kids and help build resilience in them? That was kind of the key at the time.
Yeah.
And we were also concerned about disproportionality in our discipline and in our special education placements. And so we really wanted to look at how do we look at our kids differently, and how do we see them in a different light and break this chain that's going on. So we were able to roll it out over those 5 years, and you showed up kind of toward the end of that initial goal that we had. But really what we did was we tried to figure out within our own little small team, what is SEL? And we had the wonderful help of our Castle consultants who came and visited us regularly, which was very nice, but they didn't have a lot of answers either. This was something we were all trying to figure out together. And so once we figured out how we were going to define this work, we were very fortunate to be placed in our Office of Academics. And that, I think, gave us a leg up that maybe others didn't have. I know that some SEL teams were placed in special education or, under the counseling umbrella.
Yeah, the behavior side. Yeah, very common.
Yes. And we knew we didn't want to go that direction because it was very clear that SEL was for all students. So I still think that it's a misconception to this day that SEL is some kind of behavior intervention. It's really a tier 1 foundational proactive practice that is designed to help students be their best selves and teachers be their best selves so that everyone can do their best teaching and learning together.
Absolutely. That idea, I hear it all the time, right? Like, these are my SEL kids over here, or the SEL kids go to the counselor. Really that misnomer around who SEL is for, and just, yeah, it's definitely something that needs to be rethought and held up high as a tier 1 universal approach to student support. Speaking of that, so we're experiencing school in a new way, and schooling during a pandemic has brought up a whole bunch of new learnings. And one of those has been prioritizing student health, and really SEL coming to the forefront of a way to proactively support. So you have mentioned that when you started out, you had schools that volunteered to step up, and they were vertical teams, and you worked with professional development. Is that still the approach that you would take? Like, what is your advice for people starting now? What would you do the same? Maybe what would you do differently for schools that are now looking at SEL?
Well, I think we're in a whole different world, like you said, at this point. And one of our biggest failures in the beginning was not starting with our teachers and our principals, our central office administration. We didn't start with the adults. And I think there were just a lot of assumptions made that adults are somehow all put together and they can handle things, and that it's really the kids who need to learn this stuff. Pretty quickly, I realized, and so did the rest of our team, that there are a lot of adults out there. We're all human beings. We all learn at different rates. We all have different life experiences. And we attain social and emotional skill sets and competencies over the course of our lifetime. It's not something that happens and we're done when we're 18 years old and then, we're put together.
Right.
So I really believe that, especially now, starting with your adult population, really giving people the time and the space to learn what SEL is. It's a paradigm shift for everyone. And I knew that in the beginning as well. I went through a paradigm shift when I really truly understood, what is this?
Right.
And I had to take a long, hard look at myself and figure out, what are my strengths where SEL is concerned, and what are some of the things I really need to work on. And I think if we don't give teachers and principals and administrators room to do that, that underlying assumption that this is just about kids is pervasive. And so you're going to have teachers who are struggling with their own self-regulation. And we know that kids who need help regulating need to be co-regulated with their teacher. So we need to give the adults the room and the space and the time. And I think now that what I would have done differently, I think we all agreed, pretty shortly, that we should probably have taken an entire year that first year just to focus on our staff.
So the first year, focus on staff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let me ask more about that, because like the reality is, you're right, we're all learning, and individual teachers, if they knew to do better, they would, right? Like, so what does it look like to support adult SEL? What do districts do? I mean, a lot of well-meaning districts, they buy curriculum and they're like, this is what we know to do.
Yeah.
Here is the box and the binder. And they may have some really robust PD days, but it's not enough.
Right.
It just isn't. It's not enough. So
Well,
what do we do?
Well, I think that's where you move from this idea that SEL is curriculum in a box, which that is an important part of SEL, the direct instruction piece. And a lot of our teachers learned SEL skill sets by teaching those materials to their kids.
Absolutely.
But what we really came to understand is that SEL has to be an intentional piece in how you design the climate and culture of your building and your school district, for that matter. And so what we need to be focusing on is, how do we put supports in place? How do we help our teachers feel supported, feel like they have somebody who can come in and help them when they're feeling overwhelmed? We need to have leaders who can model social and emotional competencies and skills and dispositions authentically. And part of that includes when we mess up, when we don't do a good job, when we have a negative interaction, which is usually very unwittingly. It's something that happens, when we're not being our best selves. But to be able to own up to that, apologize for it, and talk through, how can I do better next time? So it's, the culture and climate is a tricky thing. It takes time to really develop over time. And it takes intention. I think one of the big things we realized was that really great teachers and really great principals already do SEL work, maybe unintentionally. It's just part of the fabric of their beings. So we made a point of putting the word intentionality into all aspects of SEL. So not only your direct instruction, but also how are you intentionally building a climate and culture that supports this work, that creates a safe environment for people to share their thoughts and ideas, that has a conflict resolution process in place so that people can resolve their own conflicts, rather than having to constantly go to administration to help them with that. So
Yeah,
it's an ongoing effort.
Yeah, it reminds me of, in restorative practice, they talk about taking the implicit and making it explicit, right? Calling it, naming it, making sure everyone knows what the goal is and that this is how you get there. And so I heard a couple things in your comments. I heard staffing considerations. You said have people to support, right?
Yeah.
So you start talking about dedicating staff members to social emotional learning, not it being the fifth thing on someone's desk that they're responsible for, right? But the thing.
Yes.
A team. And then we talked about resources, that obviously you have the curriculum, and then you talked about modeling. So the adults that are in leadership positions being aware of their own competencies and being able to model for others. But then something that was woven in and out of your comments was time.
Mm-hmm.
The time to talk, the time to connect, the time to decompress, the time to grow, the time to make mistakes, the time to work it out, right? Like
Yes.
that time. And the best thing about time is we have control over how we measure our school days.
That's
There's
correct.
control there. The worst thing about time is we never have enough.
That's exactly right. And it's being intentional about that as well, Corey. Yeah. It's making sure that, and it doesn't have to be big chunks of time. It can be just dedicating small pieces of time so your staff can get to know each other. I mean, I remember teaching in large high schools and I knew no one outside of our English department, because when we went to faculty meetings, there was no intentional process for us to know who we were, who people in our other departments were. And that's a travesty. You can't build a culture and climate of safety and caring if you don't even know who the people in your math department are, or who the people in your fourth grade team are when you're in the second grade team.
Yeah, my easiest parallel for that is whatever you expect teachers to do with students, you should be doing with teachers.
That's exactly right.
If you expect students to sit in circles and talk, teachers need to sit in circles and talk. If you expect greetings, if you expect shares, if you whatever you expect, whatever kind of culture you want in the classroom should be replicated outside the classroom.
Well, that's right. And that's how the adults really get to experience what SEL is going to be like for their students. And even though it feels awkward and weird at first because adults aren't used to behaving in those ways or
Right.
engaging in those kinds of activities, once you do it, and if you don't overdo it, because that can happen too, and avoid this whole toxic positivity thing we've been hearing so much about lately. You know, it's not all fun and games. It's really, how are we going to get to know each other? We owe it to ourselves and our students to come to school with a positive attitude every day, in spite of what's going on around us. But we cannot as leaders expect our teachers to act like everything's rosy all the time.
Right.
And we've got to support them in being authentic with their own feelings as well, and helping them to find ways to express what they're feeling in a way that's not going to be harmful, but is going to be just an authentic expression. And that in itself makes people feel safer.
Yeah, you just need to be okay being human.
Exactly.
It has to be okay to be a human.
Yes, it does.
Right.
Yes, it does.
So you last year
Mhm.
decided to retire,
Mhm.
which is terrible news. I have to tell you, terrible news for the rest of us. Awesome news for you. But fill us in. What are you doing now? How can people connect with you? What's your story? What's going on right now?
Well, I've started a little consulting business called Chase SEL Consulting, a little LLC, and I'm still really trying to decide how I'm going to frame that and what I'm going to do with that. I think that SEL is something that can touch many communities. It can touch not just education communities, but many other communities. I'm very passionate about the adult SEL piece, and you may not know this about me, but my original undergraduate degree, I double majored in English writing and social work. And those two things really helped me become a good teacher. The social work was invaluable, but my writing, I taught English for years, high school English. And I am currently working with a company that's writing some adult SEL curriculum and helping to review that. I would really enjoy getting involved with groups that are doing writing projects around SEL. I think that would be a lot of fun. And I'm also very interested in working with rural school communities.
Okay.
I feel like the urban districts have gotten a lot of support because they're large and they have financial resources that smaller districts don't. And I'm just very interested in helping some of the smaller districts get going with their SEL work. And I kind of call myself an SEL purist. SEL has expanded so much over these last, especially 5 years. And you look at the media and a lot of things are being piled on and called SEL.
True.
And I'm still kind of at that place where I really want to keep looking at it as a foundational piece. I think that the more we can build those foundations and help people, especially the adults, develop those competencies and skill sets, that they will then be prepared to do the deeper work of or work around equity. And I think that that's kind of part of what's happened in our country, is that we've been forced into, because of events that have happened, having these really difficult conversations, and maybe not all of us being fully prepared for having those conversations.
Yeah.
So that's why I say I'm kind of an SEL purist. I'd like to get that work in place so that people have an opportunity to learn these things and practice them in their own lives in order to then build their school communities in a really good way, in a positive way.
Well, if anyone is to do it, it is you. You are the one. I'm going to include your LinkedIn handle in the notes of this video, because you are very active on LinkedIn, and I know people want to follow you and make sure they know exactly what you're up to.
That's great. I'm on Twitter as well. I'm at SEL_Caroline is my Twitter handle. And I'll give you my email address as well. It's chasecaroline8@gmail.com. And I will be sharing, as soon as I get my website fixed, I will be sharing that with through my LinkedIn account. So
awesome. Well, I will put everything in the comments because people need to know you. And I'm so glad that you did this, friend. Thank you so much.
oh, you're welcome. I have to show you something before we end.
Okay, well,
oh,
go ahead.
Do you recognize this?
Is that for me?
Yes.
I do recognize that.
It's your little thank you card that you wrote me after your visit.
I loved that visit so much.
Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. So no, thank you for having me.
Cry. Oh my God, I can't believe you did that.
No, I kept this all these years, and I save all my little cards. And when I stopped working, I pulled all of them out and reread everything. And earlier today, I thought I'm going to go find that card from Corey and show that to her.
Well, thank you. Let's promise this won't be the last time we talk, okay?
Oh, I hope not. No, ma'am. And I'm so glad to spend time with you today. This has been just delightful. Thank you so much.